Hi everyone, this is going to be a new kind of chess bootcamp video. I've got Craig, who's 2000 rated in Blitz and Rapid, and Craig also commentated on the recent battle that we had in chess bootcamp. And we thought we'd just get together and do one on a repertoire, right? Particularly, and maybe going from sub 1000 to 1000 to 1500 and then beyond, and see. Just have a chat, really, but share some ideas about where you should be focusing, your attention on openings. And Craig, I guess one good place to start would be, there are some people, I think Grandmaster Ben Feingold is one of them, who says, don't worry too much about openings if you're a beginner. Would you agree with that? If you are 700 rated, should you be trying to learn the London system or whatever?
Yeah, it's a good point, and it is something that's often said, and I would agree to an extent that beginners don't necessarily have to spend a lot of their time learning openings. But I think there's also a distinction between what maybe a more experienced player classes is learning an opening versus maybe what an improving player classes is learning an opening. So for example, I think when a sort of higher rated player talks about learning openings, they're thinking about really spending time analysing 15, 20 moves deep and all the sort of side variations. Whereas often for sort of below 1200, it's just good enough to know maybe the first 6 or 7 moves to get out of the opening without falling into a trap. And then from there, you're comfortable and you can play the middle game. So I think there's still definitely a lot of value for teaching the first sort of few moves of some key openings, just so that you can survive them and get an opportunity to play chess.
So that's what people mean by theory, right? When and how deep do you know that? But I think there's no harm in learning the first 2 or 3 moves. And another issue as well is that for beginners is to maybe if you to be too promiscuous with your openings. Do you know what I mean? So if you go on, you do a speed run with Gotham Chess or Eric Rosen or whatever, and they go, let's do D4, let's do an E4, let's do a Caro now, or whatever. You don't need to do that. And it will probably harm you until you get up to a certain level, because there's also what I think probably a critical level when you get around your level and you're starting to play tournaments against players where who you're going to be facing that day, right? Where players will start to research their opponent's repertoire and say, okay, well, I'm going to prepare something against this individual, right? Well, when you're playing online against millions of people, that's just not an issue. Yeah. So you do have to broaden your repertoire at a certain level, because you need to be able to respond to all kinds of different things that your opponents are going to throw at you. But I would say that if you're limited to online, that doesn't really matter. So, so we're going to start with white. And so, I mean, really, at a lower level, so let's say we'll start beginners, sub 1000, 500 to 1000 or whatever, it's pretty much going to be a choice between E4 and D4, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend anyone really start with, the English or any of these other quirky variations. I mean, a lot of chess teachers will tell you, start with something classical, play E4, E5, play the Ruy Lopez, all the time. If you can, or whatever. So what would you say? I mean, a lot of sub 1000s will play the London system, and I played the London for a year or so on chess.com and did all right. It got me from 1000 to 1200 pretty solidly.
Mm-hmm.
The nice thing about the London is, for example, if we do, the accelerated London like that, is that what if you can play the same kind of 7 or 8 moves every time, but is that going to be more of a help or more of a hindrance for the beginner? Or should you be, I mean, at what point would you recommend that somebody just to go, actually, I'm going to freestyle every opening and I'm just going to go on principles? It's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I actually would kind of, I'm kind of on the fence on the side where I would say that playing these simple openings are more of the hindrance side of the business than a help, because I think it's just very easy that if you're just used to blitzing out these moves sort of ad nauseum, you kind of lose perspective of what might be going on, and there might be a tactical opportunity that presents itself, but you still just autopilot move out your knight in this sort of thematic fashion, or there might be an attack coming, but you again are just like, okay, I know that knight out, and I'm always usually safe. So I tend to shy away from just giving the assistance, but I do know that they're a fan favorite for a lot of improving players because of the ability to play them against almost everything. But I actually think throwing yourself in the deep end and having that variance can actually help you sort of medium term just by getting exposure and that sort of resilience to play against all these different things. I personally was a D4 player when I first started out. So when I was like 600 to like maybe 700 or 800, I was pretty much D4. I only chose that because I looked at the database and I just saw that D4 was like 52% win and E4 was like 51. And I was like, okay, D4 must be the best. But since switching to E4, personally, I found that it gives you more range of your games. They're more attacking. They're usually following the opening principles a bit better. It gives you more opportunity to attack. There's usually more tactics involved. And I just think you get a quicker experience and learning some principles and fundamentals of chess. But obviously D4 openings have that reputation for being very solid and hard to sort of exploit. So there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah. So if somebody is like sub 1000 and is looking for a repertoire, would you say that if you want things spicy, then go E4, and if you want more solid, maybe go D4?
I think that's like a good sort of a good summary. Generally, like stereotypically, E4 is said to be like the player who wants to attack, and D4 is more the solid sort of slower games. But that's not to say that at all levels D4 can still be aggressive, but like the stereotypical sort of view is that D4 is maybe a bit more positional and slow, and E4 is maybe more aggressive and tactical.
Yeah. And obviously the advantage of either of these is that you are competing for the center straight away, which is very principled.
Yeah.
There are also openings, for example, knight F3 and then fianchetto the bishop, like a King's Indian attack kind of thing, where you don't appear to be competing for the center automatically, although developing your knights does compete for all the center squares. Is that something that you might recommend a beginner look into, or would you always go with D4?
And again, it's like, this is like just completely my own opinion from my perspective. I tend to shy away from recommending these quote unquote modern openings, purely because I think that the side that plays that way really needs to have a deeper understanding of the middle game and how to fight against the pawn center that you're giving your opponent. And if you don't know that and you're only blitzing out the first four moves, like knight out, fianchetto, castle, what do you do after something
for example, you could walk straight into getting your knight kicked.
So I recommend that the pawn moves in the center first, just because it stops them from pushing and grabbing space, and you don't have to have as much of an understanding of middle game stuff, whereas with the modern stuff, usually the middle game is connected to the fact that you've given up the center to begin with.
Yeah. And never do anything like birds opening.
Yeah.
I mean, probably at any level, I would imagine.
Yeah.
This is just horrible because you're opening up the line to your king and all kinds of things. So yeah, E4 or D4. So if you like things tactical and maybe flying by the seat of your pants a little bit more, then go for the E4 opening. So okay, let's dive in. So I'm going to go with my games as white, all games, and I've faced E5 a lot.
Yeah,
nearly 3,000 times, and everything else is about 2,000 between them. So 60% of the time I faced E4, E5.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was here playing the Danish Gambit for an awful long time. Mm-hmm. So I went spicy from the beginning. But one thing that I guess I've always liked to do is to try and surprise my opponents a bit.
Yeah.
Because you can play very classical. You can do this, and then Italian or Spanish or Scotch or, the Ponziani, which is perfectly good as well, But of course, if you go down this route, then you're going to have to deal with the Petrov and maybe a few other lines. But bottom line is you're attacking this pawn straight away. So that is by far the most common response. You see knight c6 here. Yeah, it's about 2/3 or nearly 3/4 of all the responses. And then you need to decide, am I an Italian player? Am I Ruy Lopez, Spanish, or Scotch, or Ponziani, or four knights, or whatever. So what's your kind of experience in this? I mean,
so this is the opening I go for personally. So I'm like since about 900. I think I mentioned this before. I started playing the Spanish, and the only reason, again, this is like the mindset of a beginner, at least at me. I looked at the database and I looked at a couple of videos, and apparently and evidently so, the Ruy Lopez is played about 7 times more often by masters than the Italian game. So I just thought, okay, well, if they're playing it, it must be the thing for a 900 to sort of fixate on. So I that was the sole reason why I chose that. And then I just started developing a repertoire from there. So I personally play the exchange variation, which is taking on the knight. Yeah, and the benefit of this is that, first of all, you're giving your opponent double pawns. So theoretically, if you simplify off to an endgame, you've got that slight edge with the fact that you have a 4 on this. This will quickly become a 4-on-3 majority because we always take the e5 pawn. So you'll have 4 pawns versus 3 on the king side, and you'll have 4 pawns, but they're double pawns on the queen side. So they can't create a passed pawn. We can, is the sort of the long and short of it. But even outside of like the solid endgame, there's actually quite a lot of tactical opportunities for white right out of the opening. So from here, the move is to castle, but your viewers might be wondering, well, isn't that pawn free? Because it looks like you can grab it for free just now. If you go ahead and grab it, there's various moves. The main move, queen e7 is definitely a try there. The only sort of slight inaccuracy about queen e7 is after d4, for example, trying to protect the knight. You would have to move your f pawn to really try and kick the knight back, which isn't necessarily a bad thing either. But there's a quicker way to exploit it, which is just queen d4 yourself immediately, and that you're sort of forcing the exchange immediately. So after knight, I don't know, f3, for example, is what you would play. Queen takes pawn, and then queen will block, and queen will take, and then basically white has damaged castling rights, and it's not an advantage anymore. It's just like, this isn't, why would you voluntarily walk into this? So that's why after you exchange the knights, so if you just go back to move 5 effectively, so after you take and they take back, you will castle, and now the pawn genuinely is hanging now, because if, for example, let's just play a random move, like you can just move the rook somewhere or something, or something like this. You can grab e5 because the queen d4 tactic no longer works. So let's just move the knight away. You just retreat the knight to f3. Yep. Oh
yeah, because then the king and queen would be
exactly So something like knight f3, and then if queen takes so just move the knight back to f3, for example. And if the queen dares take the e pawn, they fall into rook e1. Exactly. And that still happens even. Maybe not as much now that I've got to 2000, because I've stuck with the same opening since 900 to 2000 pretty much. But like even up until like 1400, especially in Blitz, this is still quite a common pitfall. So if we go back just to move, so from here, as we said, the pawn genuinely is hanging, so they do have to look at a way to protect that. And you can explore all of the key ways to protect it, and a lot of them open up some very quick traps, which I'm happy to share just for 2 minutes if you want me to. But I guess that's the general sort of crux of the Ruy Lopez. So there, that's the most common move, I would say, below like maybe 1800, because it's a natural move.
And you're preparing to castle, and
exactly
develop a piece. clearing the way to castling and protecting the pawns.
And protecting. So it's multi-purpose move. And my general rule and advice to sort of beginner players would be, if you're castled and your opponent isn't, then you want to break open the center as quickly as possible. So D4 is the best move. And now again, black can fall into a whole host of issues here. So if they take the pawn, that's completely fine. And I would reply queen takes pawn. It's fine to activate your queen in the middle of the board when the knight can't jump out and sort of gain a lead of time.
Yeah,
so you're immediately So you're immediately attacking G7, which is something black has to deal with. And there's like a 2 out of 3 chance they'll make a blunder here. Maybe actually even maybe higher than that. So any sort of natural looking move, we can explore all of them. So knight out immediately walks into E5 and it's a fork on 2 pieces. And I win quite a lot of games still at my level on that in blitz because it's an awkward move to predict.
Yeah.
We go back 1 move and queen comes out, the exact same fork happens. So again, because the player expects you to exchange queens and they'll recapture, but obviously you just fork.
Yeah.
And then the last main try they've got is bishop G4, bishop G4 pinning your knight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So
but that's a bigger blunder because queen takes G7 anyway.
Yeah.
And if queen F6 trying to protect the rook, for example, then you just take the bishop in that line.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and you just take the bishop and you're winning. So actually, the only move there really is to play F6 like from the start, which is a move like half of your players will find, but the other half will play one of those blunders basically. And this is one of those openings where you can win quickly, even though it's a quote unquote solid opening, because not a lot of players will play this move. I mean, if they're prepped, they will, but there's just a whole host of like pitfalls to fall into before you get to that point. So I enjoy this opening because it gives you a couple of opening tricks, but even if they don't fall into any of that, the fact that you still have the compromised pawn structure means that even if you simplify down to a normal endgame, you still have that slight edge. So it's kind of win-win for me, which is why I like it.
Yeah, it's nice. That's really cute. And also, I'm noticing this king is now quite exposed. And if he castles to G8, again, with the F pawn having moved.
Exactly.
It's not pleasant. And white's already castled. And you've not even gambited a pawn here, have you?
No, there's no gambits. This is actually more of a solid line. Yeah. It's what I play. So as white, I tend to play this type of setup. It is a bit more solid, just because I think the initiative that you get from it is like almost similar to a gambit anyway. You just get quick development, and often your opponent can just make a quick mistake. And we've only went like 6 or 7 moves deep here, so we've not went really into the Roy Lopez as such. It's just an awareness of some of the quick tricks and traps you have available to you if you go down that line.
Cool. Thank you. So going back to what I faced most, obviously E5 number 1, C5 is Siciliano.
Mm-hmm.
Very common. So what's your approach here?
So for this,
all kinds of things. I've tried B3. I've tried C3 Sicilian. Like Smith Mora. I've tried Grand Prix attack.
Yeah.
At times, and then more recently, the B4, the wing gambit, and then also I'm looking at some stuff with A3 following Levy Rosman's E4 course, where so it's almost like a kind of delayed wing gambit thing, or knight here and then B4 is the delayed wing gambit. So what's your preferred approach here?
Yeah, and you're right. There's so many things to play, and I think that's.
Do you differ between if you're playing blitz and longer time formats as well?
I do in my repertoire for black. For white, I do keep the same for both. And for white and Sicilian, you're right. There's so many things you can play, and I think that's partly why a lot of higher rated players will suggest to avoid the Sicilian because it's less for you to learn. But certainly, if you're playing as white, you can be forced to play it. It's not your choice at this point. And I personally play the open Sicilian, which is just knight F3. Yeah. And then whatever, usually they'll play D6 or knight C6, and I'll just go D4. And you're trying to open up the center quickly, and that's kind of your game plan. So like, knight out. Quite often they'll play knight F6, just attacking your E4 pawn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, from here, right.
Yeah. So something like knight f6 is like the next move, and you'll just play knight c3, protecting the pawn. And it's kind of like, it's not too complicated of an opening at this stage, but the general plan for me in this position is to castle queenside. They will usually castle kingside, and we go for a pawn storm. And it's usually decided by whose pawn storm was faster, who could attack you first. And it's quite an exciting game to play, especially as an intermediate. It gives you a lot of chances to attack. That's basically what again, something I started playing around about 1,000, 1,100. And I did, admittedly, when I played it as black, I get crushed for like the first 100 or 200 rating points, but I stuck with it just because I knew that it's a real opening. It has to click eventually. And I sort of consciously studied it. And once I was around like 12, 1,300, it was just, that was the opening for me, basically. So that's what I play as white, the open Sicilian. And if they play a slightly different variation rather than d6, if they play like knight out, I'll play the same way. So just d4 anyway, and sort of exchange off in the center. Yes. So it's kind of play a similar way.
Yeah. And the beauty of this as well is that the open Sicilian is played at every level.
Yeah.
Like the Ruy Lopez. You know, we saw, I don't know how many Ruy Lopez's at the World Championship between Carlsen and Nepo. So, you know, it's got legs. So some of these, like we were saying, some of these gambit lines, if you can use gambit, some trick gambits, like for me playing the Danish gambit, really helped me win some cheap points at Blitz particularly. And even in fact, I think, look at my win rate.
Yeah.
My games as white with d4, 58% against 38%, right? Yeah. So, with this giving up even two pawns, I've got a huge win rate with that. But there will come a point where you are just going to hit the wall with this, because there are refutations to most gambits. I wouldn't say all, but certainly ones like this, or even like if you play the England gambit as well, against d4. Anyway, but we could get onto that kind of stuff. So, okay, so that's your approach to the Sicilian, and so we're not really talking super spicy at this point, but pretty much going along with normal chess teaching, which is pick something classical, learn it, stick with it, because that will see you through your whole career up to being a title player. So let's say with e4 again, you play your knight out, preparing for the Spanish. And what if you get the Petrov?
Yeah, and this is a thing again. Like, so when I've been sort of started coaching newer players, one of their big concerns about playing these classical things is that you're giving your opponent a lot of variation. Like, they might not play the Ruy Lopez, they may play the Petrov, they may play something else. I mean, I would still reassure them insofar as, like, usually even when you looked at your own database, the Ruy Lopez, for example, that position will still account for like 75 plus, and it's diminishing sort of results for the rest of them, but it's still good to know a couple of things for those. So I haven't studied as much theory against all of the sort of minor openings. However, for here, I'll still stick to the same sort of key, like 6 moves, and then sort of take it from there. So I always take the pawn in the center of the board, which is usually the recommended move. And from here, black has either the classical Petrov, which is that move there, or they've got the Stafford Gambit, which is like a sort of tricky favorite for a lot of players.
And very fashionable at the moment, because Eric Harrison's done a lot of really cool videos on it.
Exactly, yeah. So these are the only 2 moves you have to be prepared for, the Stafford or the classical Petrov. And I'm sure we'll touch on the Stafford when we switch over to black in terms of like what to actually like recommending its use. But if we go back a second just to here, if Queen E7, which is like the standard non-gambit line, we're just retreating the knight for the most part. They will take your pawn with their knight usually. You will play Queen E2, which is a key move. Otherwise, you open yourself to discovered attack. Usually they retreat the knight to F6, and it's up to you what you do here. But I would always recommend that you don't exchange queens here, because if we exchange queens, let's just go down this line very quickly. Exchange, they take back, and you develop your bishop. And if you notice, the game is kind of switched, that black is actually a move ahead because they're ready to castle and you're not in the same pieces developed.
Oh, yeah.
So you kind of give them a one move tempo advantage by exchanging the queen. So you let them take you. Meanwhile, you develop another piece. If they don't take you, fair enough. But if they do, you still keep your one move ahead advantage. Yeah. So that was the big mistake I was making early on, where my coach just said, you don't want, like, by move 5, they shouldn't be one move ahead of you when you're white. So after here, like knight c3, for example, is fine, or even d4, for example. Yeah. Either or, some kind of thing like this. And if they take you, you exchange, you're still a move ahead, but you have an extra piece out. So you're just playing chess from here. There's no sort of like theory I've memorized, but that's also, I guess, reassuring to a lot of people that even as you progress through the intermediate and advanced ranges, you don't necessarily have to have a big memorized repertoire against all these different things. You just survive the opening, get developed and castled, and you're back to a normal game.
Yeah, and that should take you quite a long way.
Yeah.
But probably the bigger mistake is to blitz out your opening moves without, and if you're only looking at the first 4 ranks on the board, then you can get into all kinds of trouble, even on the second and third move.
Yeah.
So, okay, back to here. And then next up is the French, e6. Next I face the most.
So I've actually prepared something for this session on the French to sort of show you and your viewers. But if you may, because it might be easier if I can sort of drive the board, I've sent you a link on the chat. This will bring us through to the analysis board where we can both move pieces back and forward and draw arrows. It just means that you can drive, I can drive, and you can highlight squares and I can highlight squares as well.
Let me pull that up.
Perfect.
Okay.
Here we can both make moves. We can both highlight squares and that sort of thing. But so yeah, against the French, this is where, I mean, there's so many things you can play against the French, and I'm sure you as a French player will be used to sort of what the main things are. I always go d4 here, which is pretty much probably one of the most common replies. So I've never played the French as black, maybe once or twice in Bullet just to see, but you'll be aware of all the key moves, being like a French player. But usually it's d5 at this point. And here's where all the sort of variation comes. Do you develop a knight? Do you push the pawn? Do you exchange? And all this sort of thing. I'm quite sort of, I guess, maybe a bit more boring against the French. I like to exchange, and it's only because I've been punished too much by playing the other variations, where I just think when I was trying to just get to grips with the French, I used to play the advanced variation, which is playable. But I just feel like you're giving black too much. Black has a plan here to go after your center. And white is always playing sort of passively, trying to defend the center. And as we saw in one of your the boot camp sort of arena, it's very easy once this queen comes out. Like the bishop can come out to try and protect. They can blunder some pawns, and all of a sudden your center collapses. So I stopped playing the advanced for that reason, just because I tried to learn the correct variations, and I just felt like it was more, even though I was surviving the opening, it was still a game that I didn't want to play anyway. And then also combined with the fact that I heard a lot of higher rated French players saying that the one opening they hate the most is the exchange, because it kind of takes them out of what they've prepped for that game.
This is interesting because, I mean, yeah, I've played the French for a year or so like that.
Yeah.
I've now switched back to the Scandinavian. Because I want to wrest the initiative from my opponent on, if I can do, right? And, you know, the French is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But, you know, a couple of people said to me, you know, I don't think the French really suits your style. You know, if you're an aggressive and tactical player, the French is kind of solid, and you end up with, you know, with this bad bishop and so on, which isn't the case when you do the exchange variation.
Yeah.
But for me, and I think this is one of those areas where, if you're a beginner/improver, if you're looking only to grandmasters and IMs for your guidance, then they're far too far ahead on the trail for you, you know,
Yeah.
because they will say, oh, the French exchange is drawish and boring and stuff. That's not my experience at all at 1500, right? My experience with the French exchanges, I've had loads and loads of wins.
Yeah.
And quite often I'll play this and then try and put my bishop and my queen in line and go for a checkmate down here, for example. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the way I try to spice it up as a sort of quasi-aggressive player is usually what happens after the exchange variation, because I've looked this up. This is something that I saw on YouTube. It was I think it was Nigel Short. His kind of way to continue here is actually to play this way and basically castle queenside and try and make the French exchange an aggressive pawn push game, basically. So something like this, for example, something like this, and then just going for this kind of attack. Yeah. So I'll try and just make these types of quote unquote symmetrical or potentially boring positions, which they really aren't, because even at 2000 level, draws are very rare anyway, especially in speed chess, online chess. So these games are very rarely draws, and especially with queenside and opposite side castles. But this is what I'll try and do to make the French fit my style of being more aggressive. And usually French players, I mean, you might have more to say on this, but usually the players who pick French defense maybe don't necessarily want as open of a game as quickly as this, because that's why they play that. But then there's obviously different styles there. So I just find like it's just subtly maybe not in the spirit of the French player wants to play anyway. So it's kind of why I play this way. This is the way I would play in a serious game. I do have a gambit line against the French, which is like the alternative to this sort of thing that we discussed at the start. We can offer a solid way to play and then maybe a sort of dubious but tricky way to play. So I can cover that. But yeah, this is my approach to the main line, effectively.
Yeah, I'd like to see your gambit line.
Yeah, perfect. So I'll paste in my analysis here. So this is something that you may have heard of. I did a quick analysis of your openings database on a website called openingstree.com. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's a good resource to plug in someone's username and just see what they've been faced against. Right. So just from me plugging in your name from October to now, it said that you had played the French defense 163 times and you'd only faced this move once. So it's very rare. But it might not be that rare what if you're a regular French player, but certainly on your database you'd faced it once, but the player didn't actually play the true gambit line. They just played the move. All right. But we'll start off. This is called the Ortho Schnapp Gambit. So this has been, first of all, I'll say this has really been popularized by a chess player content creator called Jonathan Schrantz, who's kind of like a mini Eric Rosen in the sense that he does a lot of like good instructional content and he does a lot of aggressive stuff. So he's done some stuff on the Stafford and he done some stuff on the Ortho Schnapp. And he was really the first guy to spend some time analyzing this opening with engines and then try and introduce it as a real opening. So there's only like 10 moves to cover here, but at least it exposes your audience to an alternative, especially if they're at an improving level and they can afford to maybe play some of these more chaotic openings. But we'll just start standard French opening, and the move is c4 here. All right. So this is a very rare move. This is a move you've seen once, at least in the last 2 months. So you might have seen it occasionally all throughout your sort of chess career. But in the last 3 months, it's been played once out of 163 times. So that alone at least tells you that if you play this, it may come as a surprise for Black. And there's a very low chance they've actually prepared what to do against it. They'll just be trying to find organic, natural-looking moves. So they'll continue d5 anyway. Almost all, half the time this is pre-move, but this is actually the correct move to play. We'll take, they'll take, and then this is where it becomes a gambit because we don't take back. We play queen b3, very strange-looking move. And the idea is that if they take, which is the best move, we will play bishop c4. Yeah. And we're effectively trying to make the French an open position again. So again, we're trying to draw Black out of the comfort zone of playing their usual French plan. And we're trying to open the board and have a very tactical game before they get a chance to really know what's going on. And the chances are they won't, because this is such a rare line to go down. So from here, The first thing I would say is this is not like the Stafford Gambit, which when we cover that from black, it has a lot of traps that have been analysed. So there's various opportunities to win very quickly. There are some opportunities to win quickly here, but this is more of a gambit in the sense that you're gambiting a pawn just for a sort of general lead in development. So you're not trying to win a specific quick checkmate in like 5 moves. It's more you're going to win with a general like additional development, and that's the way we'll sort of, that's the true sort of gambit fashion, giving up a pawn to get development. So from here,
first, like this to me looks like this would suit a Danish gambit player.
Yeah,
having the bishop there and the queen behind it, it's a common pattern that you would expect. So they'll know to look out for certain moves like knight c6, knight a5, forking those two. So that's like, oh, that's a pattern I recognise. So I'm kind of tuned into that.
Yeah, exactly. And this might be well suited then to those who play the Danish as something else to try against the French. And it's like they can have a similar kind of idea and plan to move. But from here, I mean, the obvious threat is we're attacking f7, so they have to respond to that. There's no real alternative they can play here. So usually it's going to be a queen move, trying to basically defend this pawn. Now the best move is the move we'll analyse, which is queen e7. From here,
Danish player,
exactly.
Queen comes out. I'm thinking queen's knight comes out.
Very similar plan of knight c3 here. Again, just trying to get quick development. And although there's not a looming checkmate threat just yet, it's just you're getting that initiative by, they have very awkward development, first of all, with the queen blocking the bishop. This queen will have to move. Like when we look at the England gambit, one of the drawbacks is sometimes if they don't play into it, you've kind of nerfed your development by having your queen misplaced. So it's similar here. The queen's in the way of the bishop, which wants to get out, and they want to get safe as quickly as possible. So 2 things, this develops a piece into the game, and it's important that this knight defends against an eventual queen b4 check, because this is a common way that the French players will try and neutralize the attack, because the worst case scenario for any gambit player is to lose your queen straight away because you've given up material and there's no attack left, and then you're just down a pawn with no compensation. So we're stopping this check because we will be moving this pawn, and you don't want to invite queen check, and it forces the exchange of the queens off, protected by the bishop. So knight c3 blocks against that. Again, we're just looking at a natural developing move here. And then here, there's a very strange line here. It looks like we're giving up another pawn.
Yeah.
They will almost...
I've seen Jonathan Chance's video on this.
Yeah. So they will almost always take, and taking's the best move anyway. And it's strange because it's like you're giving up a pawn with a discovered check on your king. But the point, again, is just to speed up your development, and you're getting ready to queenside castle. Wow. This pawn will never, ever survive anyway. It's overextended to the max, so it's never surviving. And you're just building up a very quick attack here. So again, something like knight c6, they're trying to catch up in development. You can continue to develop. And a very common plan here is to take this knight and jump here, and you've just got the triple attack on this pawn. So that's one thing you can be looking out for. And we'll explore your move here. So this is a sideline. So if they try this sort of classical fork of the 2 pieces, it's a bit premature here because you can just play a simple move like queen a4, which basically kicks the knight back to where it started. So they actually lose a temple, and it allows
it's pinned as well.
Yeah. So from here, it looks like you're technically, I mean, officially you're 2 pawns down, but remember this pawn is never going to survive. So you're actually only 1 pawn down.
And you've completed development.
You've completed development, and they still have all of this back rank issues. So the engine still says this is equal, even though you're a pawn down, and that tells you something about even the engine agrees that you've got compensation immediately. Yeah. And you have the initiative here with either like knight b5, for example. You have ideas just of rook coming to the center, all these kind of discoveries. So this is what I said at the start. It's not necessarily a gambit where you have an immediate checkmate follow-up, but you just have an overwhelming sort of leading development. It's something I've started throwing into my blitz repertoire. And again, even facing players at 2000 blitz, they don't know what to do against this. So generally you have an exciting game. And it's just that way if you're sick of playing against a certain reply or the French, or because some people just don't do well in certain positions. I personally am probably weakest in French and Caro-Kann positions. If I play the advanced variation, which is what I did for the longest time before I decided, right, I'm just going to play something a bit offbeat and just stay away from that position, and that actually helped me in the long term. So that's essentially how the games will tend to develop. Now, here obviously there's various tactics. We won't go down too much of it because we're now basically getting deep into theory. But just a couple of sort of ways to win here. Just one very quick sideline I'll show you again, just because this is an actual real game that Eric Rosen played. So just coming back to this standard position, rather than knight f6, we have knight c6, which again is just another sort of way to play. And I'm just trying to just expose your audience to like various different ideas in this opening. But again, we're just jumping in with the knight immediately attacking the queen. And, you know, again, this sort of typical move, trying to complete your development and get castled. In this particular game, first of all, the idea here is multi-purpose, and I'd maybe invite your viewers to maybe pause the video and think of what the idea could be here, which I'll reveal in 2 seconds.
With the D3 move? With
the D3 move, yep. And now I'll reveal it, but it's connected actually with usually bringing your bishop here, and you're trying to x-ray this fork. Oh. This is a big incoming threat here. So if they take, for example, then we can just play bishop f4 immediately. We're actually winning because the queen has to move. So, for example, he jumped in this particular game, and I should say this is against a 2400 rated blitz player. So this shows you like the intuition's still not good enough. You have to know what you're doing against this opening. And then again, just black just resigned on the spot here because of this. It's just completely lost. So there's like various tactical problems that black has, and again, it's just something that French players typically want to avoid. So there's a lot of fun to be had. I would encourage your viewers just to Google it, look it up on YouTube if they want further analysis on it. But it's certainly a good introduction to how to spice up the French as white. But alternatively, you have that exchange variation with the opposite side castles if you want to maybe play it a bit safer without having to know as much. So maybe I would recommend this to your improving players, and the other way to maybe the sort of newer beginners.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the exchange is a bit more straightforward, but like you've got to know what your moves are here, because equally when you play something this sharp, if you don't know what you're doing as the aggressor, it can very easily blow up in your face as well.
Definitely, yeah. So you have,
do you want to go back to the start of this? Well, we can stay on this board. And think about the Caro-Kann, which I think is obviously very popular.
Yeah. Starts off here and here.
Modern. Okay, so D4 is offered on a plate, isn't it, here?
Yeah.
You're a D4.
Yeah, and again, just coming back to like opening principles, I would just generally recommend that if your opponent voluntarily gives you the option to play E4 and D4, just take it sort of as a matter of course, unless you have a specific opening that you already play. But we're just grabbing space in the center. We're trying to sort of neutralize some of their development with their pieces. We're taking away all these squares. So whenever you have that chance, then do it. And the Caro-Kann move is this D5. And then here you're back to having like a broad range of choice for white. What is it that you play against white in this variation?
I play F3, the fantasy variation.
Yeah, which is very popular as well.
You've got the advance also, which is very similar to the French advance, but this pawn, is it's got one move to go. But yeah, that's really as far as I've gone. I just basically what I did, because in the intermediate level, what I'm looking for sideline responses that my opponents aren't going to be very familiar with, but that I can be more familiar with. Because a Caro-Kann player, so it gets a bit strategic now, but a Caro-Kann player, I look at, you can go on Lee Chess, or you can go on, your own games or whatever, and see, okay, what are the uncommon responses to this position, and which turn out to be best, say, for white. So that tends to be what I'll just pull up, I'll pull up a Lee Chess Explorer, because the difference to Lee Chess is, on the chess.com Explorer, you can look up your own games, the Masters database, or you can look up other users by name. What I like about this is that if you go to the Open Explorer on Lee Chess, so I don't know if this is part of your kind of toolkit that you use, is that you can, like 1600, 1800, I'll limit it to that, and then I'll go, okay, well, at E4 there, there, and we have the starting position for the carro. And then, so I'm looking at what's best for white, right? So knight d2. That's curious. And white's got a 54-40 win rate. So that's pretty good. And then here you've got f3, which is the one that I selected, with a 52-44. Okay. So, you know, I'll go with that. And then you can even build up you can write your own opening book from this point and build your own theory. But that's kind of basically what I go for. I'll go on to here, look in the real world. I'm not looking at what grandmasters play, because you're not a grandmaster, right? So I'll look to say, well, what's going to give me a decent chance? So, and I'm deliberately avoid the majority. I'm looking for something that they're only going to see 5% of the time. But when I play a Caro-Kann, I get this 100% of the time. So, yeah. So that's the approach I went for. But knight d2 looks kind of weird, but does quite well. So what's your approach to this?
Yeah, so my approach, similar in nature to like your idea of using Lichess. So that is a really good resource, and definitely I would say what you said is really great advice for newer players. Because the mistake a lot of newer players make is that they just pick the main line, study the main line. And what I guess they don't realize is that everyone that you play against will know that equal to, probably even more than you, especially if you're new. And if I could go back in time, I probably would favor picking like the 4th best reply, 5th best reply, because you play it 100% of the time. They see it 1 in 20, and you're in your comfort zone.
Okay, so if Black's a Caro-Kann player against d4, right?
Yeah,
they're going to see the main line 40-50% of the time, right? So don't play that, because they've got 200 games in their repertoire and you've got 5. You know, it just doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Which is why even coming back to like that Roy Lopez exchange I play, like the main move in the Roy Lopez is to retreat the bishop, as you may know. And I exchange, so already you kind of take black out their comfort zone. So it's the same idea with a lot of these openings. I personally still play e5, which I know that the Lichess database says tends to favor black. But actually, if we toggle over to Lichess just for a moment, I'll show you what my line is, and it might start to reveal itself as being a good move. So bishop f5 is the main line, and you can see black is scoring better than white here.
Yeah, by a long way, bishop f5.
By a long way. I play the move h4, which you see here, look all the way down, is the first one that actually starts to take. It takes black out of their game. Yeah. So h4 is the move I play. This is called the Tal variation, named after Mikhail Tal. Yep. So already that's going to have a sort of spoiler alert to being like a sort of tactical crazy game. And from here, first of all, I should say that e6, which is the 3rd most common move, is an autopilot blunder that Caro-Kann players make all the time. They're so used to blitzing out e6 because it's thematic. They don't realize that their bishop is now trapped. So g4, the bishop has no escape. G6. So straight away you see here, I mean, black shouldn't even be winning 20% of the time, but this is basically the bishop has no squares. If it goes to e4, which looks to be an escape, you just play f3, and there's still nowhere for it to go because the knight protects the pawn. So the bishop's just a goner. So straight away within 5 moves, you're setting up a game-ending blunder. And you can see here that was still played several thousand times. It was like the 3rd most common move. But what if they don't fall into the trap? There's just a very quick thing I'll show, and I'll probably show it back on the chess.com board, just because it might be a bit easier for me to show it quickly. But coming back to this Caro-Kann board after this, so h4. If they play e6, we already know we're winning. We just trap the bishop and we're a piece up. And if you're sort of maybe above 1,000, you're not likely to drop a piece and return somewhere later on, then you're going to win.
That's interesting, because, sorry, just jump in. A lot of players will play a reverse London setup as well with black.
Yeah.
You know, it tended to be my default that I would go to for any kind of cookie opening that I didn't recognize. I'd do a reverse London if I could.
Exactly, yeah. So, and this is kind of even right at the very start when we're talking about the London, it's a good opening, very solid, but if you're playing that, you just want to avoid playing moves where you're blitzing stuff out without really taking into account what's happening from your opponent. So in this case, e6 is a very, very common blunder. and it just loses a piece. So here they have to be aware to play h5 or at least h6 to give themselves this escape square that they can retreat the bishop to. And the sideline I play, I won't go too deep into it because it is quite complicated, but it's definitely worth exploring if you're certainly in the intermediate level. Bishop g5, you're just trying to sort of make black's development awkward. They can't even still play the e6 move because the queen is pinned. And if they can't move this pawn, they can't really develop the king side at all. So usually most common move is queen here, just looking to escape the pin. And then this is where the sort of trap, we can set a small trap for black here, which again has been identified through using the Lichess Explorer as you did. You sort of parse through the moves and see, okay, you look further down the list and bishop d3 seems to be a move out of nowhere that black falls into a trap humanly. So they think, well, hang on, if you're not just blundered.
Computer hates it. The computer says, you're a donkey, you've messed up.
The computer sort of accepts up there minus 1.5. That computer is seeing that you've truly dropped the pawn. The computer knows though what to do. Humans don't. So the human will take, we will take, they will take here. And then we just play a subtle move, which again, I'll say it once, your viewers can always rewind this and rewatch it. But the point is we play e6 to set up a trap. Computer, again, it will fluctuate a little bit. But if the opponent continues to take the rook here, essentially what we do is we set up a queen trap. So the queen will be trapped from here. First of all, the queen only has one chance to escape. And if it escapes, it's a blunder. So if they try and get out of here, then you see the bar shooting up for white. All right. And the idea is basically here, and we're winning everything and also threatening mate at the same time.
Queen c8 is mate as well, eh?
Yeah, if we can get to queen c8, yeah. So that's why black actually can't save the queen from here. They have to usually defend against this. Wow. And then we just have a simple plan of just bishop back and the queen's lost.
Oh, I like that. That is spicy.
There's no way to do it. And it's all very, very natural. If you look at the Lichess database, it's the top move that's played every time. So it's not like one of these things where you're going down something really, really, really niche and you might only get it. It's like every game I play in the Caro-Kann ends in that position. And it's still not over because black still gets the bishop and the rook as compensation and the pawn. So material is actually equal. A rook, bishop, and a pawn is 9 versus the queen. But it's a great imbalance, compounded by the fact that black's development is still really bad for the whole game, whereas you've still got like your pieces out. So for example, if we go down this sort of main line here, b6, for example, like we've got various moves here, bishop coming back, the knight being developed, like all these sort of things. But the net result is that once this queen is lost, they usually still have all their pieces on the back rank and you're a bit more developed. So that's your compensation. Plus you have the imbalance of the queen for the two pieces. And you can see the engine loves it for white. It's like +4.
Would e takes f7 be a move here?
E takes, for here, yeah, that is a move. That's a move as well. Yeah, that can be played. That's one of the, it's like the third line. The main continuation here is either to develop this knight castle. So for example, something like this, whatever they play, if they dare take your pawn, for example, you're just castling. And again, as soon as you move this knight,
c3 wins the queen.
Either way, yeah. So you can either come back bishop back, or you can develop the knight. And there's pros and cons to, because this might be the bit where it's maybe not so clear for your audience as to which would you do? Would you bring the bishop back and trade the bishop for the queen, or knight out? But that seems to give up a rook, which is giving the exchange up for the queen. The kind of compensation for developing the knight, so if they just play like a random move, like, I don't know, knight out, for example. Knight c3, obviously the queen's coming off this way. The engine still likes this for white, because even though you've given up 2 rooks rather than a rook and a bishop, you still have this massive lead in development, which is really the key to this position. Like the knight can jump into an outpost. This king's not getting safe. The bishop's really blunted in from both sides. The rook doesn't, by default, the rook can't get involved really. So really they're just playing with these 2 pieces in this, which you can exchange off at any moment. So practically speaking, from a human perspective, it's just difficult for black to play this, and you can see the engine loves it. Even though black is up 3 points of material, it's +6 for white. So you can kind of see there that shows you that the engine basically just doesn't recognize these as valid pieces because they can't play.
Yeah.
It's like you're almost a rook and a bishop down if they can't play in the game.
And what's more, your Caro-Kann player is going to be completely flustered.
Exactly. And they've innocently
down a lot on time as well.
Yeah, exactly. And they've innocently went into this line just by playing the top natural moves one after the other. There's not something like we've not played hope chess hoping they'll fall into this. Even if they don't, we're still fine. But if they do, then they're lost. So that's. Admittedly, it is quite complicated for maybe the complete beginner, but maybe for an improving player who's a bit more tactically aware, they can just sort of parse over this video and get a general idea for how to play against this move.
Fantastic. Right. Well, let's carry on with white then. If we don't get the carrow, how about d6? It's probably, I would say, probably the next most common, which is the Pierce, right?
Pierce, yeah. And this is one where I actually don't have anything prepared against. And it's just, again, like if you look at my openings tree, you'll see, so that the higher up you get, pretty much the larger the proportion of replies are just E5 and just C5. Those are like 90%. And then you'll still get Caro and French in sort of equal proportion. But after that, like Pierce and all these other modern things are really, really, really rare. Although they are still played at all levels. But I think most players just gravitate to one of the sort of like famous openings, if you like.
So here, generally like you, I'll just play D4.
So yeah, so again, if I have the opportunity to, I'll just grab the center, and if they play whatever they play, like something like this or whatever move order they play, I will just sort of naturally develop my pieces in either queenside castle or kingside castle, depending on how it's looking. If they're going to castle kingside, I will probably try castle queenside and sort of go for this typical kingside attack. Like one of the sort of downsides of having this fee and kettle system is, as you've spoke about in your videos before, is you create a hook, which is a big target in an opposite side castle scenario because you can grab onto it immediately, and sometimes that's a very quick attack.
I've used an H-pawn attack even when kingside castled.
Yeah.
This as well. It can be very, very dangerous because you gain more. Black loses a lot more when Harry goes charging up.
Yeah. So I'm not sure of like all the total sort of main lines of what Black would play here, but like something like this. And again, it's always very thematic in a lot of these fee and kettle systems where Black kind of relies on having that bishop both as an attacking piece and a defensive piece. And if you can exchange that bishop off, Black usually has nothing to show for the fact that they've given themselves all of these dark squared weaknesses, which again is just compounded by the fact that you can attack their king. So if you can get this bishop off the board, that's a big win in a lot of positions. But that's very typical, even in a Sicilian dragon, for example, or any kind of opening where they have that fee and kettle bishop. We're trying to usually get that off the board, and it's usually pretty good for white if they can. But that's just the typical. As far as I go, there's not much theory in terms of what I know to play. I just intuitively play developing moves, and I just know general plans about taking the bishop out, kingside attack, that sort of stuff.
Fantastic stuff.
Is that similar to what you play yourself, or do you have something?
Well, yeah, completely. I mean, I've probably had this position a dozen times.
Yeah,
if not more. So, and very often just going for that, 2 pawns, 2 knights, 2 bishops behind the pawn. It's rock solid.
Yeah.
From there, you haven't screwed up yet. So it's then all right, let's play chess from this point.
Yeah.
And I tend to favour opposite side castling and a pawn storm as well.
Yeah.
You do. Okay, so I think we've been going about an hour. Let's quickly have a look at from Black's perspective as well, because the alternative is we do a whole nother video on this, but I think we can, So as a rough idea, if we switch the board around, okay, so against E4, what's your...
So, and I have 2...
Do you tend to like playing the same openings as Black as you do as white?
To some extent. I have 2 replies to E4 actually now. And again, just coming back to when I first started out, I had 1 reply to E4 and pretty much 1 reply to D4, and I would just play those 2 religiously. And that was pretty good for me, and it still is good for me. I now introduce the Petrov purely as a Stafford Gambit attempt because I like playing in that kind of way. So now if you look at my Blitz database, pretty much since the Stafford Gambit came out, I now almost exclusively enter it. And if I'm in a match with someone playing lots of games in a row and they have a reputation for it, then I'll default to my main solid reply, which is actually a Sicilian. So I played a Sicilian in a serious game or a game where I know the Stafford won't work. If the Stafford works, I'll try it at least.
So with the Petrov, the thing about obviously not f6 on move 1 is that
so not quite on move 1 immediately. Okay. Yeah, that's the Nimzo witch, I think. So yeah, so something like this and then this.
Yeah, because then you end up having to maneuver your knight over to the queen's. Yeah. It gets a bit funky. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll play this, and the point being, and you've done a video on this, so maybe you can maybe link this at some point. But essentially, I've seen your video on the Stafford where you're basically joining this kind of.
Basically, anyone who wants to learn the Stafford, Eric Rosen's the man.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's nothing I can add at all. Yeah.
And the general idea here is that you're just setting up a lot of pressure on this pawn, and there's lots of mating attacks with this queen coming in combination with these pieces. It's very difficult for white to deal with, and it's very, very trappy. And the good thing about it is that black probably has like 5 or so traps that they can play here, almost irrespective of what white plays. So there's various lines, and there are maybe like 1 or 2 sort of quote unquote refutations to it, but it's one of these things where it's like a risk to reward ratio, where if you're playing a gambit, you're just sort of kind of betting on the chance that 9 out of 10 players don't know what to do. So you're kind of in that scenario where it's still worth it. And for the 1 in 10 that do know what to do, then you're giving yourself a challenge to try and win it anyway. But more often than not, you'll get a quick win. So I would recommend to check out some further content on that.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty out there on the Stafford, so there's nothing we can really.
Yeah.
So other than that, the Sicilian now.
And other than that, I play the Sicilian Najdorf specifically. And again, so usually if they play, most common you'll see is the open Sicilian, so something like this.
But just sticking to the Sicilian as a general idea, a lot of higher level players will say beginners should avoid the Sicilian because there's so much theory, right?
Yeah.
But, what we started out saying was play principled rather than trying to memorize a load of theory.
Yeah,
you'll improve better. So do you think there's anything wrong per se with somebody who's rated 500 today saying I'm going to be a Sicilian player?
I don't think so. I mean, I would still, like someone who's brand new, I probably would still gravitate to telling them to play E5 or maybe one of them like French or something. The Sicilian is, I would say, arguably is quite theory heavy, but even for a beginner, you can still learn like a pet line and a rough idea, and you can still get away with it. As I said, I started playing it around about 900, 1,000, just because again, at that stage, I was just like, what's the best opening for black? What's the most aggressive way to play? And I couldn't really make it work for me. And I had to put in the work to at least learn. And even like when you're 1,000 rated or 1,100, you still get the same like intelligence level as you have at any point. You can still put in the work and learn it. So you can still do that at any level. But I think somewhere around 1,100-1,200, that's when you also stop making some of the more like the other tactical mistakes where, because it's almost irrelevant learning a specific complicated opening if you drop a piece anyway. So once you're at the stage where you're tactically aware and not dropping anything, then I'd say that's the point where you can really choose an opening that you want, and you can put in the work and learn it quite a bit. It's not as challenging as it seems when we say you have to learn a lot of stuff, because really I haven't personally learned a lot of stuff. I just kind of learn one main reply and then just basically have an idea of how to play the middle game. And the general broad point in the Sicilian, open Sicilian at least, because it is different for the different Sicilians, but when you're basically you're attacking and defending, generally, as I said, there'll usually be some kind of opposite side castles, and it just gets to this sort of typical game where you're launching your pawns up, trying to attack the king that's castled here, and they're trying to come down and attack you with your castled here, and it's whose attack is first. And I quite like those games. I like attacking games naturally, so anything that's really aggressive or attacking is what I'll go for, which isn't to some people's sort of choosing. Some people like a bit of a slower game, but yeah, general idea Sicilian is just opposite side castles and pawn storm is a very rudimentary idea. Obviously there's various sidelines and sometimes same side castles, and then you're just playing chess if you don't know a plan specifically. But I think that's what I've been playing since around, as I said, like 1100, and it's been okay for me. And I'll still play it at my level if I know the Stafford's not going to work for me. So I've got my kind of dubious and solid options.
Brilliant. Okay, well, one that we missed is what do you play against the Scandinavian as white?
So I actually do play a gambit against the Scandinavian. So after this and this, it depends what they play. If they just play a sort of traditional, like they go back, I tend to find this doesn't really give me too many problems. I'll just develop castle, and I don't really feel that there's a massive advantage for black there. The more sort of challenging line I feel, which is the main move, usually, obviously it depends on which type of Scandinavian you play, because I know, having looked at your database, you tend to play the night out. So it depends what Scandinavian I'm faced with, but if I'm faced with the main line, I'll play b4 here. And this is called, I think it's called the Mysis Gambit or something like that. And you can see it up in the database there at the side. Now, first thing I'll say is that even at 2000 level, I will win about 1 in 5 games with something like this, and you just win the queen outright because they don't expect you to play b4. It's not a common move. So I've got countless games, literally like dozens, where I just win the queen, even at my rating level. And I play blitz, so I'm not playing bullet. I'm still playing like a decent amount of time, and players still pre-move stuff out. But the point being, if they take the pawn, the very general idea is that we're immediately just forgetting it's a gambit, so we're going for this fork.
Wow.
All right. And a sort of natural way to defend, which is the main way, second top line on the engine, queen a5, just defending the thing here. Bishop out. And again, we're sort of trying to get this very quick piece development. And now the classic sort of temptation is to kick the knight away. Yeah. And this is when you actually make a mistake. So knight being kicked, for example, you'll see the engine starting to shoot up. We just launched this attack. Bishop takes f7, king takes, queen takes, all forced. And then you just give up the knight and you pick up the queen.
It's a bit like the Tennyson Gambit, the IC.
Yeah, and this is very, very natural. If you go for the b4 line, there's a high chance you'll get this exact position like in at least half of your games. So again, you're winning these games very quickly. So again, something like this.
And thank you.
And IMs like so. I learned this from, I think it was what I was watching, like an IM on stream against another IM. So it's one of these lines where it's actually playable at like the really high levels. I was actually fortunate enough to have a game against Wesley So on Chess 24, and I played this exact line against him, and he actually burned like 40 seconds in a 3-minute game trying to work out what to do, because he was like, okay, b4, that's no problem. And then after I jumped him a piece, he was like, hang on, there's an f7 idea here that he's probably not seen in like 1,000 years because no one plays it at like 2800.
Wow.
He still obviously crushed me, not because of the opening, he just beat me in the end game, but it just shows that you can catch out a lot of high-rated players because they just don't expect, it's not a common move, but it's very natural. It's very natural to get to this position if you play it.
Oh, lovely.
That's what I play, and if it's not successful, then worst case, you are just truly down a pawn, but you still have good development and you just castle and try and play a pawn down, but with an extra 2 pieces out on the board.
Yeah.
So.
And of course, so yeah, if queen takes, black's still got a queen stuck out on the board and on an unfamiliar square. So your Scandinavian player, although yes, you've got a free pawn, but again, they're going to be out of their knowledge and preparation already, aren't they?
Yeah, and the fact that the engine says it's still equal for white, even though they're a pawn down, that's kind of proving that there's true compensation, because it's not recognizing you're a pawn down, because it knows you're going to get initiative with the fast development. And it might not be the most sort of solid way to play in a classical game, but in blitz and rapid 10-minute chess, it's definitely a weapon to throw out there against a classical Scandinavian player who plays queen takes d4.
Brilliant stuff. All right, well, let's go back to the black thing and let's talk about d4.
Yep.
Because I've done a bunch of stuff against d4. I've played some Dutch defenses with f5, which is aggressive and kind of works. Most recently, the Leningrad Dutch, with that fianchetto bishop and castle that way. But then, more recently, I've been going for this idea and the Budapest Gambit, which is that, or there's this alternative, the Fajarovic, but they're both very interesting and very trappy.
Yeah.
Interested in your take on d4. And
yeah, and perhaps it might be beneficial for your viewers just to see the idea of this Budapest trap, because it's quite a famous trap and it's actually very, very nice.
Yeah.
Now I don't play the Budapest myself, but I know there's a general idea of is it having is it bishop first?
Bishop 4 is very common, but no, I haven't learned this. I've literally got an ebook on it. I'm going to study it.
Okay, so there's a very famous trap. I'm just trying to remember that goes a bit something like. I'm trying to. In fact, I'll just get it. I'll just get it up.
Is it the one where hang on? Because do you play? Oh no, you have to bring out your bishop first, because I think Queen E7 is a common move again here.
Queen E7 is a common move. I'll just get it up on the database just so that we've got it. But for example, I think knight F3. Yeah, okay. So I think here it's here going to be. So best trap. It's basically just a famous smothered mate idea. So I'm sure it will be in your ebook at some point. But I think the idea is something along the lines of. I think it might, yeah. It's really annoying because I don't have it to hand. It's a famous trap. If anyone just Googles like Budapest trap, essentially it's something along the lines of like, yeah, I can get it. Whilst we look at the next opening, I'll pull it up just for your viewers at the end because it's just useful for them to be aware of because it's quite nice.
Yeah.
And it's something I have had a few wins with it, but it's just been that long ago since I played it.
Well, I'll probably do some videos on the Budapest coming up, so we don't need to cover that today. But yeah. So that's what I've been playing. But so what's you're not a Budapest player, so what's your spicy approach to?
So yes, so coming back to the sort of my typical approach, I will have like an ultra aggressive way to play, and then a traditionally more sound way to play. So the ultra aggressive way I play, which is what I primarily play in like 3 or 5 minute chess, is the England Gambit, almost exclusively. Now this, I will say for your viewers, this is like, it's literally dubious, meaning that it's not very strong. There is a reputation for it, but it's one of those ones where it's risk to reward ratio once again, where even if there's a reputation for it, the chances of someone being well prepped against it tends to be less so than the number of players who are prepped against it, which is surprising because
I would say below my level, below 1500, you will get, and there is a very, very classic trap, which is worth showing, isn't it?
Yeah, I can run through that. So almost every player will take, and that's actually not a mistake. That's the correct move, and this is the only move that actually puts white up on the engine, like plus 1.7. You see there. The point being, so there's two traps here. There's one that's like ultra dubious, which I would not recommend because too many people know it, which is, I'll go down that one first. It's more of a bullet weapon. You can try it. It probably still works at lower levels. Idea is bishop here, for example. Knight out, very common move. And then we just play this d6 line. They will take and you pre-move or play knight here as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
They take, and then you're doing this classic distraction technique where you basically remove the defender of the queen.
Yeah, deflect the king.
Yeah. So I've won quite a lot of games there, and I stopped playing it because eventually, like maybe as I was climbing through 17, 18, 1900, it just stopped. Players just knew what to do.
I've seen Eric Rosen play that one.
Yeah, exactly. So I've pretty much given that up for the last probably 500 England Gambits that I've played, and I exclusively go for the main line, which is this. Point being, we're just attacking this pawn immediately. If they do nothing to defend it, then we just grab a pawn. And already we're in an equal game where white doesn't know theory because they've never, like, it's just not a common thing. So you're both in a kind of comfort zone where you know you're not going to get outdone in terms of opening prep. So the best move is to defend the pawn. So knight out or bishop out. You'll find that it transposes regardless. So we will play this awkward looking queen move.
Then bishop f4 to add the second defender.
Yep. So this is what I said. So you can either play bishop here first, queen here, and then knight here. Either way, if you try and hang on to the pawn, it will transpose to the same move order, the same position. And now it's black to move, and we're playing this queen b4 check move here, right? The point is it's a triple fork on everything.
Yeah.
So the most common move is bishop d2, which is the best move, which is the only move that really saves the bishop, because if you try and block, for example, you just lose the bishop. That's the first thing. If you, again, develop the knight, we're still going to take the bishop. And although the engine is saying, well, why is the evaluation still equal? White gets counterplay with knight here trying to come in and fork. So there's a sort of complicated line there. But it's still in black's interest, I feel, to pick up the bishop. It's black's best move on the engine, take the bishop. But the most common move, and the move that almost everyone will play, which is the best move for white still, is to come back with the bishop. But I'll real quick, I'll show you what happens if they try and block with the queen, for example. Big mistake. We will take here.
And then white goes, I can save my rook with queen c3 and everything's protected.
Yeah, and that looks like a really good move, because it's like, well, how do you do anything here? And there's no like checkmate because bishop. So this is probably a chance again where I'll ask your viewers to maybe pause for 5 seconds and try and find the move. And the move will be bishop b4.
Stunning move.
And the queen is actually pinned. The queen cannot take the queen because it's pinned. And it's just immediately lost and the game's over. You can see it's like -13 on the engine.
Yeah.
So that's why bishop d2 is pretty much the only move. We will still take the pawn anyway. And again, same tactics happen. If, okay, hang on, my rook's under attack, let me try and defend. But the same tactic once again, bishop here, and this bishop is pinned. Now, it's not as bad as the queen being pinned, but for example, how do we protect this? So queen here, very natural move. We take, queen takes, and now there's no pin, but we actually blunder checkmate in one move. So there's various tactics here that win very quickly. I'll say the only move for white to play is actually knight c3, and this kind of defends everything. And this is quote unquote the refutation for the England Gambit. I still play a more advanced line, which is actually a queen sacrifice line, which is playable in blitz. So that the move being here. Now, the most common move is here. I will actually give up the queen here. And believe it or not, even though you're a queen down and the engine doesn't like it, I win more games than I lose from this position, because it's very hard for white to play this. It's just, practically speaking, it's quite difficult, especially in blitz. Usually they waste a lot of time trying to work out how to actually attack you. You will always, I guess the key ingredients here is just to make sure that you generally want to avoid exchanging pieces. You want to keep your bishop here and keep the position complicated. And usually you'll either win an exchange, or you'll win something back, or they run out of time. But long story short, if you just look at Aman Hambleton does an excellent video on the England Gambit from Chessbra. And there's also another coach who I don't know his second name. He's called Mayo. But if you type Mayo England Gambit, he has a video on it as well. And I think the Butcher, exactly. He works quite closely with the chess subs. So he's
great for theory, isn't he? He's
pulling from a lot of the same stuff. But the point being, this is like a very ultra aggressive way to play. It's not very sound, but again, this is what I'll play in blitz, because in blitz you can get away with almost anything, especially something crazy, and it's not so clear what to do. Aman Hambleton incidentally played this in a classical game against another grandmaster and actually had a drawn position. Yeah, he did lose the endgame, but he lost a drawn endgame. So that shows that you can still actually get a good game against another GM technically over the board if you're at that level.
Because if you look at it as well, black's still got 2 knights, you've still got the bishop pair. You've got all your material apart from your queen and a pawn. So there's plenty to play with. You've got more pieces than white has, and that is worth something.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. There's just a lot of ways to win games here. I mean, I've got a library on my own database. Like if someone wants to put in my name into opening tree and sort of parse through it, you'll see some of the ways to play. But Aman Hambleton does a good job of it. So does Mayo, the Butcher. The key thing once again is just don't exchange your pieces. Keep the position complicated. Keep your bishop here, and you're usually winning. And also coming back to that Scandinavian sort of the blunder after this and this. So many players autopilot blitz out bishop f4, the London, and they just lose the bishop immediately. It still happens at my level, not as much, but it still happens. Like I'll still have a game that happens like this if I'm doing a long session each day, and they just resign on the spot. So. So there's always these. I'm
inspired. Yeah.
And if they don't, I'll just explain. If they don't because a lot of players will, after you play this, they'll just give up the pawn because they know there's too much complication. And that's actually something I would say is probably good for your viewers to know, is if a player does a gambit on you that you don't know what to do against, generally just don't try and hang on to the pawn, because if you lose the pawn, you're still equal anyway. But if you try and hang on to the pawn, there's a chance you're walking into a trap, because that's the whole point of the gambit in the first place. So if you're coming back to like this typical, like the Danish, for example, you play something like this and you take and they give up, you can actually just push, which is a sort of awkward looking move, but it's often interrupts a lot of the Danish plans. Or any sort of gambit, the Smith-Morra gambit that some people play. If you don't really know what to do, just push. And again, it kind of interrupts their development. That's what they're trying to do. So yeah, word of advice, if you don't know the gambit, don't accept it.
Yeah, for the Scandinavian. So
yeah,
takes this. The best move again is d4. Just pretend that pawn doesn't exist. Don't try and hang on to it, because that's a lot of the gambits depend on you trying to hold on to your extra pawn, and it's generally not worth doing. Okay, well, I think that's a really good place to wind up, unless you've got anything else that's just bursting out. I think we've covered a lot of stuff, and I'll tell you what, you've inspired me to pull up some of these awkward ones, and maybe the England gambit as well against d4, because I have been looking for it. I've been looking for a really aggressive response to d4, because most d4 players, they don't play d4 because they love super spicy, sharp tactical positions. They play d4 because they're expecting to go into a nice cozy London.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff to play there. The King's Gambit as well. I don't know if there's anything you want to touch on there. That's an opening that White tends to like. There's quite a clear. Maybe I'll just finish on the King's Gambit. It's just one final thing to play. Because I know that's an opening that's favoured by beginners, and I don't see it that much at my level, although I still sometimes do. But this is the move here, which is kind of counterintuitive, because it's like, well, aren't we immediately opening up the kind of F pawn, which we're told not to do? The move I would recommend, and I don't know. Do you play E5 much yourself? Do you experience the King's Gambit?
Not recently, no. I've been playing the French and Scandinavian for a long time now.
Yeah, and the move, just for your sort of for your own audience, that tends to cause White the most problems is actually D5. It's called the fault beer counter gambit, and you're mixing it up very aggressive, similar to the England gambit. You're getting your line by force. You don't have to let them; they can't avoid it.
The mirror image of the Albin counter gambit,
which is also ultra, maybe not ultra, but it's definitely aggressive. Thing for Black to play against, like the Queen's Gambit, for example. First of all, I'll say is if they take this pawn, then they're immediately lost on the spot. You can see the engine shoots up to -8. And again, even at my level, 1900, 2000 blitz players occasionally still take on this pawn, because queen, exactly. You're doing the classic skewer on the rook. So all sorts of traps here. And if they don't take, then again, like however they play something like this, then you can just resort to sort of your principles of just taking, for example, and just, developing natural, getting your stuff out castled. But the point is, you've escaped their main line that they're trying to do on you. They're playing that for a reason, because they've got maybe some kind of quick attack prepped, and you stop it quite often by playing the move d5. And there will still be ways for White to continue against d5. But if you research a video on the King's Gambit, normally you'll hear the players speak about d5 is basically the move that King's Gambit players don't want to see, because it's just the move that kind of nullifies a lot of their stuff. So that's maybe a quick thing you can look at for how to combat that. Again, not a lot of theory thereafter. You're just developing pieces and sort of continuing in natural fashion. If they take your pawn, of course, you can just take back with the queen. And even if they hit the queen, you can actually just sort of retreat the queen. You can get this. You can hang on to this pawn at some point, move the queen back, queen e6, for example. But the key thing is you've neutralized the typical King's Gambit play, and that's really the way we're looking to try and punish a lot of these openings. Don't let them have their game. We'll have our game instead.
Absolutely, that's definitely my way. Yeah, and the chess boot camp style. So really great. Thank you ever so much, mate, for this.
No problem.
I can't wait to review this video myself and go over some of these lines and start incorporating some of them. So guys, I hope that's been useful for all of you watching as well. I will put Craig's link to your profile in the description. If you're looking for a chess coach, you may want to look Craig up on chess.com. But other than that, be looking out for some interesting things to come in 2022 from Chess Bootcamp. Okay, so I'll say no more right now, but we'll leave it there. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you soon.
Cheers. Thanks everyone.